Hey, what's going on, guys? Over here, and welcome back to another episode of Pitlane Podcast, episode number 102 today, to review the Mexican Grand Prix and really to just talk about the fact that history was made yesterday. Rather, it's a Monday after the Sunday, but history is made. Lewis Hamilton is a five-time world champion there. He gets in the likes of Fangio and Schumacher now, and that kind of realm of the three-man club. And so we're here to talk about it. Usual host, myself, Arav, Callum, and Tom. Guys, let's start with that. Then we'll get to the race because we'll just discuss this for a little bit. Hamilton getting this record fifth championship. It was in a bit of a weird style, wasn't it, though?
Yeah, it's strange because usually, obviously, Hamilton's basically he's been dominating the last couple of races, and then we go to Mexico where obviously it's a bit higher altitude, and it suddenly seemed to swap the top three almost on its head, and we found that Hamilton didn't even finish on the podium whilst taking his championship, like last year in Mexico as well.
Yep.
But very peculiar race. He was left a little bit subdued by the fact that the race was so bad for him, but I don't think he's really going to care. The fact that he's now got 5 championships under his belt, he's now in the top 3 when it comes to championships. And he's beaten Sebastian Vettel again after a very hardly fought battle. But obviously it did seem to change halfway through the season, but he still had to do the job. And you've also got to you've also got to give it to Mercedes as well. I mean, Hamilton had one retirement all season, off the top of my head, and that was in Austria. But other than that, he's been absolutely flawless from Mercedes and absolutely flawless from Hamilton. Like he definitely showed why he's got 5 world championships by taking his 5th in the circumstances that he did it in.
I've got very little to add. To be fair, it's very complete. Deserved it. Best driver, most consistent, which is the main thing I want to point out.
Yeah.
He was super consistent. I've genuinely not seen him so bulletproof. Not a mistake from Austria onwards when the car let him down. The consistency level was ridiculous. So yeah, full credit to him and really turned it around. Hockenheim being even more than Austria, Hockenheim being the turning point from that Saturday qualifying situation to how Sunday played out, the way he won that race. And from there, he just sort of carried that momentum all the way to the end, and he deserved it. Really, really bossed it. So congrats on a 5-star season.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, I think there's there's not much else I can really add to that. Really, you two kind of summed that up perfectly. Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can deny he's done the best job out of everyone, out of those 20 drivers that stepped into the ring this year. And in context of his career, the 5th one, I mean, do we think he's, it obviously depends on the car, but now people are obviously going to start asking the question, does he now look towards a 6th, a 7th to try and, go and match Schumacher? Is it possible? Do you guys think we could see it in a lifetime?
You can't put it past him. I mean, like what Tom said with it's not necessarily his speed, and we have got to comment on the fact that his speed has been immense this season.
Oh yeah, for sure.
No, like his race mindset is absolutely phenomenal. But I think you've also got to put it to his qualifying. Like his qualifying laps.
Yeah.
Well, the pole
Some
lap
of the
of
laps
Singapore
that he pulled
sticks
out.
out.
Let's speak about Singapore. One of the best laps I think we've seen of his career, and you can't put it past him to, even if he's on the back foot, they put in so much effort and so much work to make that car quick enough for Q3, and then Hamilton just pulls it out of the bag, and to be that far ahead in a qualifying session, especially at Singapore, was phenomenal. So moving forward into 2019, I mean, he's contracted until the end of 2020, I believe.
Yep.
So
Mathematically,
he can get 7.
Equal. Yeah.
Would he like to match, or would he like to go on one more? He has said that now seeing the concepts of 2021, he wouldn't mind driving them, but it's not you don't look silly saying he might have a chance of getting 7 or 6.
I don't think so. I think it's fair, considering the last few years. Again, you have to wonder how strong will Ferrari and Red Bull be. We still have a pretty considerable regulation change next year, which has to be said, which could shuffle things up a bit, a la 2017 first half of the season for Mercedes. So you never know. With F1, there's definitely a few speed bumps, but I think beating it is going to be, in my opinion, tough, because if it's not the 2019 regs that messes it up for Mercedes, it might be 2021.
Yeah.
But for sure, he's got 2 more years in this more or less similar-ish car era that we're in to try and win 2 more championships and try and equal the 7. Beating it, personally, I'm not sure. I'm not, because also I think The fact his contract runs out before the reg change in 2021 also tells me that maybe he's already got one eye on maybe calling it after that, you know?
Yeah.
Because I literally think the only motivation he's got is to get 7. And if he, for example, if he didn't win it next year and he can't do it and he can only win 6, he will literally race the next season, his last year in his contract, and I think he will call it a 6. I think he'll only do beyond that if he's on 7 come 2021 and he can get an 8th. So
well, the thing is now also with the records that he's got to beat, obviously he's got the most poles. I don't think fastest laps no one really cares about, really. Like he's the biggest one is poles and wins. And how many wins is he on now? He's on 81.
No, I think it's less than that.
Is
He's
it
on
less
81
than that?
poles.
81 poles. What's it? I don't know how many race victories.
I still think he's like 7. I think he's like 15, 20 wins away still.
Right.
I think he's on 70, 71 wins.
He's got that motivation to get that record, and obviously he's got the World Championship one. But also away from records, it's up to him, obviously, on whether or not he'd like to. But the only other thing that people say for Lewis Hamilton is to drive for Ferrari. And it sounds stupid because everyone thinks he's going to finish at Mercedes, and he probably will do. But aside from all the records, the only team he really needs to drive for now, that if he wanted to and it really burnt, like if he had a strong desire to, then it would be Ferrari. But whether or not Vettel will be sticking around in Ferrari, or whether or not a seat would open up for him, and whether or not he could care, because at the minute, obviously, I think was it halfway through this season where people started to question his desire for the sport, and then like certain races, like for example Germany, and then you look at it and go, okay, no, he's still got that fight. You can see that he's still enjoying the sport, but whether or not in 2 years' time, he could go, you know what, I'm finishing it at Mercedes, or I'm going to go on to go to another team, because he's got the power to go to Ferrari, definitely. Whether or not Ferrari would like him, and whether or not he'd like to go there is a different story. But you know, I thought I'd throw that one in because it's the records that people focus on. But it's also, I think, every driver growing up.
Just that fairy tale thing.
Yeah, the fairy tale thing of driving a Formula 1 car in the team of Ferrari.
I don't think it's going to happen, personally. I don't know.
I'm not 100%.
He's never been particularly public about driving for Ferrari, not like Alonso or Vettel had been in the past.
Yeah.
You know, he grew up idolising Ayrton Senna. He never touched a Ferrari. I don't think it's, you know, within him.
He's been with Mercedes as a
he's been Mercedes and McLaren, two of Ferrari's biggest rivals.
Yeah, but he's been with the Mercedes family essentially from from when he was
also,
13.
you know,
so
he's not getting younger. Realistically, if he did move to Ferrari, it'd have to be soon, because for me, Leclerc is going to be the man there for a long time, and I think he knows that. And I think if he's not moving by 2021 to Ferrari, if that's even a thing, even then he's going to be like 35, 36.
Yeah.
You could argue not so much in his prime. So you never know. You never know, but I think that one's quite out there, personally.
Yeah, it is wildly out there. I just thought I'd throw that one in, because some people are like, well, you know, he's had a long time at Mercedes, and would he like to finish his career at Mercedes, or would he like to go elsewhere? But
I think
other than that,
I think the recent ventures he's been able to do away from the sport with Merck's new sponsors and brands, and just the freedom he's getting more and more each season, I think it's making his life easier to kind of stay at Mercedes in a way. Like, you know, like
it's what I said in the last podcast about all this stuff he's allowed to do, the lifestyle he has. I think he's like mentally, he's at such a peak.
Yeah, he's in a great place right now, even compared to like 3 years ago when he signed for Merck.
For sure.
So yeah, I mean, I think there's much point for him at the moment, personally, from my view, to change much right now. But it's a very interesting question to really see where we'll see Hamilton in time. But, you know, I think some people said it on Twitter as well, and I kind of had to think about it for a second, but then I kind of agree with it. You know, we might think of it now because we're here in the now, the present, just watching it. But, you know, if we go on 20 years down the line, we literally have just seen history happen. We've seen a British world champion get his 5th championship. You know, even if he doesn't go on for a 6th and 7th, it's still something that, you know, down the line, if you had kids, you can tell your kids, you know, I was there, I watched him actually do it. I watched the very race where he got the 5th championship, or, you know, whatever. So it is kind of crazy to think that we are watching that kind of history. And we obviously have watched history already before, you know, with Hamilton winning the multiple, Vettel winning his 4. That's all.
Yeah,
you know, the tapestry of F1.
In a way, like sometimes I feel like people that watching F1 now don't realise what they're watching.
Yeah,
like,
if
you don't like Hamilton, you're realising you're watching history being made.
Yeah, you forget that the fact that we watch Vettel get 4 championships and now Hamilton get the 5th. that's literally woven into F1's tapestry now. They are literally going to be there in, on the concrete wall of F1 legends and F1 history being written. They're there for forever now. So, yeah, it's a pretty crazy to think about. Speaking of Vettel then, we mentioned Hamilton now. Just quickly on to Vettel before we move on to the race. Obviously, unfortunately, 2 times now he's been beaten by Hamilton there in the Ferrari, and this season it was even closer really than last year. And the Ferrari car now, the way it's jumped back in performance after they've removed parts and had a bit of a downgrade upgrade sort of situation, it's kind of a big what if kind of thing. Obviously, I think you point to the mistakes are probably the biggest thing that I think Vettel can look back on. And it seems like, he said at Germany he's not going to think about it. And I think, Tom, you mentioned it will kind of haunt him a little bit. And I think some of the things he said after this race definitely kind of make it seem like, I think he is really good. This one feels even worse than last year in a way, because he was like,
he had
obviously...
Had the car.
He had the car.
Last year he didn't.
Yeah, he had last year he had the car for maybe 1-2 races. But this...
for the first half of the season maybe, but once Spa, Monza kicked in, you could see there was still quite a way, but this year it was the biggest chance in the V6 era to dethrone Mercedes. Yeah,
I mean, some of the words he was saying after the race, and just his body language as well on some of the photos, you could definitely tell.
That hurt.
I think this one hurt a lot. There was some pictures of the press conference where I think he was just waiting for them to start, or I think it might have just been after they stopped, and he genuinely looked really distraught inside.
You can't take anything away from him though. I remember obviously the last race that we saw Vettel in his prime really was the race that we went to, which was Belgium. He was
he dominated
properly on it. But it is a story of pretty much. I want to say Germany, obviously, but Germany was the start of it, but it wasn't the full downpour. I feel like almost Italy was, when obviously Kimi started to get on his case as well.
I think it was Germany. For me, Germany's a breaker.
Yeah, that sat in his mind, but then it was a culmination of events which just kept going and going and going. And
for sure.
It's gotten to the point where obviously it was a mistake a race, which obviously we've just come off the back of talking about Hamilton, who made 0 mistakes pretty much. Nothing majorly wrong.
He's made a lot of mistakes, but I was saying this to my dad yesterday. If you add the numbers, if he hadn't done the Germany mistake and had won the race, and at best Hamilton would have got second, that's a 32-point swing, which 32 points now in the championship would make it completely different.
Yeah.
You could say the little mistakes here and there, points he's thrown away, fair enough, but that was 32 points gone in just like that in one race, and that was the big one. Regardless, it wasn't just depressing for him, the fact that it was his home race, and the fact he's never won there. It was also just the amount of points, considering Hamilton from 14th start won the race on his home turf. Right now, 32 points swing in the championship would make it a lot more different than what it is right now, and it'd still be up for grabs, and it would probably go down to the last race. That's how much of a difference it'd make. And also Ferrari would be a lot closer from the constructors as well. So there's literally that Hockenheim mistake is super, super critical in my opinion. It's every race that goes by, it's more and more important, and it's got a much bigger and heavier blow towards him and the team.
Yeah, but I mean, life goes on. The reset will happen for next year.
I mean, the constructors are still up for grabs, so that could be interesting.
Yeah, definitely with Ferrari's resurgence as well.
It's rare that as well, isn't it? We've had the drivers decided before the constructors.
Yeah,
I was going to say that. Normally it's the constructors.
That's not happened in 10 years.
I was too used to it because I think twice in a row, the constructors got crowned at Russia for Mercedes. So I was so used to them doing it at Russia. So, it is kind of odd in that way. But
I mean, they could have done it this weekend if they outscored Ferrari by 20 points, but they didn't. Instead, Ferrari got both cars ahead of both Mercedes. Podiums. And apparently, if Ferrari were to 1-2 in Brazil, it would be in their hands for Abu Dhabi. If that makes sense. They could actually, just by outperforming them, but they need to get either a 1-2, whether it be in Abu Dhabi and or Brazil, one or the other. But they have to get a 1-2 finish.
More likely to be Abu Dhabi. I think Mercedes could go a little bit better in Brazil.
Well, Vettel won at Brazil last year, so
I can't remember that. Oh, it was when
Hamilton started from the back, but even still,
crashed,
Vettel still won and beat Bottas.
Well, what's quite interesting now moving forwards is, are we going to see Hamilton win a race after he's won a championship?
It's true, because I think time and time again we've seen Hamilton just kind of be like,
drop the ball,
job done.
Yeah.
But it's like he doesn't need to care that much. But at the same time,
the
the difference was, I think this time it is still up in the air a little bit, and I think the way he said about, I'm not really going to celebrate that much tonight. It might hit me a bit more when I wake up tomorrow morning, and the fact that he was flying out of Mexico, he did that Instagram post of there's still constructors to fight, and he categorically kind of said, I'm still focused on that. Unlike the previous times when it was wrapped up, there's still a job to do for his team, basically for his employer.
Yeah,
so
usually the constructors is wrapped up first.
On the other hand, is not there now.
It is slipping a bit.
It's Ferrari and Brazil's high altitude again, so Red Bull are going to be a factor again. So you could argue it could be another 5th and 6th for
maybe,
Mercedes
but
if
at the same
Ricciardo's car
time,
holds up.
unlike Mexico, it's a bit more vertically challenged Sao Paulo, so Red Bull might struggle a bit more than they did at Mexico with the uphill section at the end there. So,
but if Mercedes have these tyre struggles again, they're in trouble.
Yeah, the tyres played a huge factor into that, but it's going to be intriguing at least, hopefully, for the last two, because I think there's a worry that it was going to be quite dead, but this surprising last two races where Ferrari have just come back into it, at least going to give us some racing, for nothing, but it's at least some racing. But let's talk about that race then. Speaking about racing, that Mexico Grand Prix, Verstappen winning it. Obviously, Red Bulls looked really great. It was a really weird thing in FP1 and 2, seeing all the Renault teams apart from McLaren performing there. The two works. Renaults were looking like, oh, they're beating Mercedes here. Crazy. Eventually, obviously, it shuffled down a little bit, but still, very mature drive from Verstappen, I feel. And just like he did at the Austrian Grand Prix, where he took the tyres really long and was like, I'm fine on the radio. Did the same thing today, didn't seem like he was worried at all, really. The engineer was more worried than him about those tyres, because he said at one point it's going to be a very interesting race, Max, nonetheless, if it's 2 or 3, 1 or 2 stop. But mature driver, I feel. Can't really say much else.
Yeah. No, fair play to him as well, because I was shocked how angry he was after qualifying. Ricciardo very much ruffled his feathers, especially obviously after the whole weekend. Everyone was gassing up Verstappen this, future world champion. And then right at the last minute, Ricciardo just goes, nicks it. Hi, I'm still here. Still here. I'm just about to leave, but I'm still here. So it was it was very interesting to see how annoyed he was, but how mature. I said what he said, like he only had 3 hours sleep or something, and then just bounced back the following day. Literally nailed his start, and that was it. He literally just had to focus on his tyres and going off into the distance, which is what he did. He literally fucked off and put everyone out and literally stuck Ricciardo in it. Obviously, Ricciardo, Hamilton, Vettel, Raikkonen, all kind of tripping over each other in their different strategies, overtaking, whilst Verstappen cruised pretty much.
Yeah. And then the other side, pour one out for Dan Ricciardo, another DNF. It's one of the most consistent things I've ever seen in Formula One, actually. It's DNFs.
Ever since he announced he's leaving, it's such an incredible coincidence. It really is. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it's funny how it's worked out. Since Monza, when he said he was leaving, every weekend.
He was already angry, obviously, last race, but now, punching the wall. But, literally, the way he just said, oh, Gasly can drive the car, I'm done with this car now, was really, that was the most telling. I was just like, yeah, okay, I think he's hit
We saw the relief on his face as well after qualifying. He was...
Exactly, yeah.
shocked.
I mean, he did an individual Instagram post for a pole position, which not a lot of the times you really do.
No.
When you're in a top team, you don't really bother with posting about a pole position that much, unless you're doing a whole media strategy of posting about every session, which Ricciardo doesn't. So he was definitely very overjoyed.
He's had such a poor reliability record. It's like he's been phased out so much, and the fact it was a shock he got pole. It's like we're forgetting who he is and the caliber of driver he really is.
Yeah.
That's how bad the reliability's been. It's just completely got him phased out of.
It's not helping as well that the fact that obviously he has got the teammate of Verstappen, where you need to be on your game, but if your car is constantly breaking down, then
how can
mentally,
you get any momentum or rhythm?
He's got no momentum, no rhythm, and he's not able to build up any sort of effort.
It's like in a football team, if you're trying to get some get some form going, and the manager keeps not playing you, not playing. It's like that. He's getting taken out by no fault of his own, and it's almost like a manager just pulling out no, you're not starting this game. You're going to start this next game. You're not going to start. It's just he has a good result, DNF, issue here in quality or whatever, DNF again. He just can't get any rhythm going. So
and in the end, you might give up on putting an extra 5% in.
Yeah,
if you know
exactly.
You're not.
You lose hope in a way. You lose kind of the
he
sense
knows
of
probably he's going into next weekend, probably having to take an engine penalty, more than likely.
Possibly, yeah.
Because whatever went wrong with his engine, and it's
no, apparently it's hydraulics. Apparently.
Oh right. Okay, so
Like that could have easily have fucked a gearbox.
yeah,
So you
maybe
never know.
we'll see.
You never know with
Hopefully
Red
for
Bull.
his sanity, not. But
Yeah,
we'll see.
it's just such a shame because even you go back to Austin as well, like the way that Verstappen managed to get second. You think where could Ricciardo have got? Ricciardo could have easily have won Austin because he was obviously at the front. It's such a shame to see.
There's a lot of what ifs there.
I can't wait for him to leave, to be honest, because he needs a reset. Like
I
next
think,
year,
yeah.
he'll come back strong, but obviously,
I think
as strong as that Renault can be,
I
he'll be
think
as
he's
strong
going to
as
get
possible.
a reset of mentally like Vettel got when he went to Ferrari in terms of
Mm.
like, okay, Renault might not be there like Ferrari were, but mentally speaking, I think
Yeah.
he'll be in a really happy place. Just
He can
getting away.
readjust. Yeah.
Yeah,
'Cause
readjust.
he knows that Red Bull are a race-winning team, not a championship-winning team just yet. But obviously, because they've been on that, he's been teased basically since 2014.
Yeah.
So, because you got to think for Ricciardo as well. Like he moved into that team after it just won its 4th World Championship in a row, and he hasn't had a single one in 4 years. That must hurt. That must hurt a lot. So he'll need that reset. But
The word you're looking for there is tragic.
Tragic, yeah.
Very
So,
tragic.
Moving through, we kind of discussed Ferrari in that race somewhat. Obviously we talked about the resurgence a little bit. Strategy-wise, I mean, I don't think Vettel and Raikkonen Vettel couldn't have done anything more really with what he was trying to do. Yeah, he did have.
Vettel's race was good. Yeah,
he did a very good race. Clinical
better.
in a way, I think.
Yeah,
the way he shoved off Bottas at the start, I thought that was very clinical. Like, did what he had to do. Then easy move on Hamilton after they kind of realized, everyone kind of realized, oh wow, Mercedes are really struggling here.
Yeah.
Not much else to really say because Merc won. It was a really weird race because like the rest of the midfield were a lap down, but then Merc themselves were a lap down as well.
Yeah, like that's when you knew that Mercedes were off the pace. And also, I remember looking. It was around about lap 40, and I was looking at the gaps, and everyone was separated by like 15 seconds.
Yeah,
there was like a 15-second gap between Verstappen and Vettel, and then Raikkonen was a little bit further down the field. Then
I think
Hamilton
Vettel
somehow
could have
just
troubled
dropped
Verstappen,
off.
but I think that he got caught up too much, and generally on lap 1 you could see he couldn't get through on the straight, and he had to get past those cars one by one. And you could see, especially the Red Bull, he was struggling to get close to Ricciardo quite a lot. He was quite easy to get past Hamilton, but he couldn't get past the Red Bull.
Yeah, the drive off the final corner was great for Red Bull.
Yeah, and also I think just the aero complexity, obviously through the middle sector, giving him a little bit of dirty around there, maybe more than the Mercedes, just made it harder for it to follow. But I think if Vettel had started better or qualified it just on, in third place instead of fourth and got the start Hamilton had, he could have easily taken first and I think could have held it. I think he had pace to win. Like when he was pumping in those fastest laps on the super soft, like 30 laps old tyres, and he was going consistently fast. You could see he had some pace about him. But again, the story of Ferrari really just too little too late, I think.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, sums it up really in one sentence there. So after the top 5, I was going to say 6, but Ricciardo wasn't in there. You had Hulkenberg winning the Formula B race in P6 for Renault.
Second victory in a row.
Yeah, second Formula B victory in a row. Great stuff.
Amazing.
And Renault now going even closer to now just sealing out that 4th place. So I'm happy for them because it did look kind of a little bit dire here and there, like around Japan and stuff, like where their cars just didn't seem back on pace. And so I'm kind of happy for their sake because that would have been quite annoying for them to be.
And it should have been 6th and 7th, like last race. It should have been 6th and 7th this race.
Yeah.
It should have been. Because Sainz was ahead of Hulkenberg.
Sainz was having a good race until he had that failure, which is quite odd because obviously we did have a few more failures than what we usually see, which is we could have expected that, to be honest, with the whole three engine rule.
Maybe
but
teams
obviously
pushing
with the
harder.
lack of altitude as well and how hot the temperatures were, we did have a few more retirements this race. But Sainz was driving a good race until he got no scoped by his own engine. But yeah, like Renault have basically sealed off this year now. Which is good to see that means they've got a good momentum for next year, but whether or not they can do that whole momentum thing of, we're going to break into the top 3 is something we need to question because...
Well, they'll have a good budget and a strong lineup. Like Force India, but they'll have the budget behind them, so here's hoping.
Without a doubt. And also Leclerc, who had yet another brilliant race. Like I struggle, to be fair, and even Sauber as well as a whole.
Well, both Saubers got points.
Yeah,
so.
And Ericsson did some good defending during that race. I remember, who was he defending against? I think it was one of the
various.
Hasses.
He was in the wars that race.
Yeah,
Magnussen. At times he was overtaking him. I think the Toro Rossos.
Yes.
Ocon, Perez. Yeah, Perez. That's one. I think it was Perez, wasn't it? Yeah,
Perez was the one that was doing a lot of battling
Fun.
with. It was Perez and Ericsson or everything, I remember, because they had a right little tussle. It was every single lap they was trying to overtake each other. And Ericsson actually put his heart on the line because obviously this is his last season now. He was doing a nice bit, little bit of defending. But we've also got to big up a certain Van Dorn who finally gets some points after. I can't remember how many races. It's quite a few though.
Since
Baku, and that's what 15 races.
April.
Yeah,
Jesus Christ, that was
a long time ago.
Ages ago. I can't even remember April. It was that long ago, but I mean, it was good to see from McLaren because obviously everyone looked at the Renault engines and went, right, okay, so Renault engines are decent now, and then they looked down the field and went, well, Red Bull at the top and Renault at the top. So where's McLaren? Oh wait,
the best chassis
being knocked out in Q1.
Alonso hadn't retired where he'd been that race if Van Dorn got 8th, because apparently McLaren had the best tyre reliability / consistency. So they could. Right. Van Dorn, I think, pit on lap 1 and did the whole race on super softs. I think.
Wow.
I think that's what I remember seeing.
That's no wonder he was so far up then.
Or he pit really early on lap 3, because do you remember when they showed the onboard and he was behind Gasly? He was last, but he was behind him and he was trying to get past. I think he came in very, very, very early for the super softs and had good pace. He just couldn't get through. But he went pretty much the whole race on that tyre, and he had good pace all the way through. It didn't really go off, and it makes me wonder, like, what could have Alonso done? He started 12th on a free set or like tyre choice.
Yeah, and that was so unlucky as well. It literally was just minding his own business, and Ocon getting a little bit too hairy with his front wing, and it ends up. What was even the failure? Was it just overheating?
I think the piece lodged into
debris
his
went into
right. That's just so, like he never gets away with stuff like in what was it? Even in Austin, it was any other tap, and he would have just spun and he would be able to rejoin. But no, he gets his entire side pod ruined.
He was on course to break the record for most laps raced. He now cannot break it.
No, he can't, which is a shame.
But I think he'll be back. I've got a feeling this won't be the last we'll see of him.
Oh, we'll see. Then P10 Gasly, good work for him. He was also
P20 to P20, P20 to P10.
Yeah, another last points basically for him. Really great showing, and he was definitely found that more satisfying after the little tangle he had with Ocon. I think in the presser, he was like, I got points, he didn't, so there you go.
Yeah. Nice.
Him and Hartley have been exchanging nearly, haven't they? Hartley did it in the last race. This time, Gasly's done last to points. They seem a lot closer again this weekend. Hartley seemed closer to Gasly again. I think he out-qualified him, didn't he?
Yeah.
He qualified him. Apparently he had updated aero parts in the car, but Hartley had a bit of contact with I think it was Ocon, wasn't it? He kind of damaged his floor.
Yeah, he had to pit lap 1, Hartley.
Yeah, and also pit lap 1 as well. So
he flat spotted his tyre on the first lap as well, so he.
But still, it was only a couple of seconds off Gasly, I think. There's a car in between, but I mean they were close, and it's good to see. They seem to be a lot more competitive, like amongst each other now, a lot closer of a pace. And Hartley lately has kind of been speaking out, having a couple of digs at the team because of the whole Alex Albon thing going on in the background. And also, he was told that he has to perform better.
Yeah, well, I think it's worked for his sake. I mean, he won't like to hear it, but I think it's worked for him mentally.
But I mean, these are tracks that he's actually raced on last year.
Yeah, true, yeah.
So like, USA was the first one, and Mexico, he raced there last year as well, and you can see, coincidentally, he seems to have raced again a bit.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fair point, yeah. And then after those guys, Williams, P12, P13 for Sorokin, ahead of Hartley, and then ahead of both Haas, who were nowhere. So we can kind of do these two together because Williams, both teams had a quiet weekend, but Haas,
Williams were quiet, but Haas were nowhere.
Absolutely,
what happened?
Did they even turn up?
They vanished off the face. They brought out the 2016 car at retirement and drove it out for the weekend or something.
Q1 out in Q1, and then the race. It was just. You only ever saw them getting overtaken, not overtaking anyone. It was a bit of a strange, one of those weird ones. But that's usually Haas. Like Haas have those weekends.
Yeah, it's another Monaco for them.
But this was by far the worst of the season. They were gone, nothing. Slowest team.
Haas finished.
Finito.
Haas finished out here. All right. For their sake, again, almost like Renault in a way. Hopefully, they're moved a bit onto next year. Well, that's what they want to mentally tell themselves. Yeah, I should hope so for their sake. But that rounds up the Mexican Grand Prix. Then, really, not much else to really say. I did enjoy. I think obviously it was a very slow burner because Mexico is such a long Grand Prix anyway, 71 laps.
Yeah.
But I did enjoy the fact that teams were again rustled a little bit this time by the tyres rather than lack of data. But it kind of just shows the argument of just whether it be tyre or data, it's good when teams don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I think the tyres, like, we need to properly sit down as like, because I don't want to ever come out and say, oh yeah, we need this amount of stops or we need these sort of tyres, because in reality sometimes we don't know, because every race is different. But teams not knowing what's going on generally brings a bit more unpredictability. In the same way that we can use an example, the weather. If they don't know if it's going to rain or not, it makes it quite interesting. And Austin proved that. And even in Mexico as well, obviously they didn't know what the Super Soft was going to be like. Obviously they all tried to push the hypers as far as possible in practice, and they realised that they're like chewing gum. And they only had a few sets of Super Soft, so they had to just save them for the race and just hope for the best. Yeah. And it was brilliant to see a little bit of unpredictability and differing strategies. Whether or not it made a good race, questionable. But I feel like we kind of let this race slide.
I really enjoyed it.
It was just a bit of a slow burner, but the problem was, obviously, it was so spread out that. But we had a bit.
I thought there was good overtake. I thought it was lots of overtakes in a good race. I really enjoyed it. I thought, like the constant.
Well, I was introducing someone to F1 for the first time whilst watching this race, and it wasn't the best race to.
I disagree.
Really?
I thought it was a good race. You had the Perez versus Ericsson constant battling. You had the Ocon versus Gasly. That trickled sort of further down the top six was, midfield pack.
But most of the overtakes were wasn't really hard fought, if you know what I mean, because obviously they're on different strategies. That's the only trouble with more stops, is that when they're on different strategies, they don't really put up much of a fight. And obviously there's some overtakes were a bit they're a bit easy.
I think it was more of a case of all of them was really tiptoeing around, because. If you're gonna make tyres that wear out, you need to also allow them to pick tyres like that. But obviously, the way the choices were made and stuff like that, they didn't really know it was gonna be like that in a way. Whereas if you did have a situation where it was probably a couple of years ago, where people knew the tyres were gonna wear out, so they picked aggressive strategies and it kind of worked out better. Whereas they're kind of just tiptoeing around this time.
Well, even still, I think it was almost a bit of a cock tease as well. Cause we were just let's finish this championship now, and we finally wrapped it up, which. Only took a couple of races. An extra race more than what we thought it would.
An extra race more, but it happened in the end, and so there we have it. A 5-time world champion is in our midst now on the grid. Hamilton's done it, and so we'll round out the season. Obviously, Brazil, Abu Dhabi, hopefully, with Ferrari resurging a little bit, and Red Bull might be a bit better at Brazil as well. Could hopefully be a good ending.
I'd like to see the constructors go to the wire. I would. That would make it a good, for the team.
Yeah.
I think... Sure, the Drivers' Championship's done, but even for me, for once, I'd actually care a little bit about it. Just the fact knowing that's on the line in Abu Dhabi.
I think
the first time in years, Abu Dhabi would mean something.
If Ferrari can rock up and actually do the job in Brazil, then
I think they can. They've got pace.
I'm still not fully behind it. We'll go down to the wire. In terms it might still mathematically be possible at Abu Dhabi, but I don't think there'll be that that thing in the air when there's actually something on the line and you kind of feel that tension.
Yeah, it will go down to Abu Dhabi. I'm 90% sure because the gap's 50 points and there's 43 in a 1-2 finish.
So if it does anyway, I don't know. I'm hoping that Ferrari can pull something out really good at Brazil, to the fact that you kind of get that tension.
Yeah.
But I don't think that. Personally, for me, I don't think there will be that tension. Obviously, for people like Toto Wolff, he's always tense, but I don't think there'll be that powerful tension of oh god, Ferrari might do this and get it.
Neutral or not, generally, I would just like to see. I think it's only fair. It'd be a nice way to end it for me to see. I'd like to see Vettel win Brazil and maybe Abu Dhabi, but I think I'd like to see Vettel win one more race because he's had a really bad time, and I think the championship standings deserve him to be a bit closer to them. I think to reflect what the season really has been.
Right. Yeah.
Just to put a nice bow tie on the end of it and have a constructors battle to the end. I think that would be a nice way to go out.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be the end of our podcast then for the Mexican Grand Prix and Lewis Hamilton's 5th championship. So if you guys did enjoy the podcast, and do hit that like button, let us know what you thought in the comments below about any of that stuff we talked about. Anything, the championship, the race, whatnot, the next two to go on. But yeah, we're on audio. If you do not know already, links always in the description on SoundCloud and iTunes. If you do like what we're doing around here, also you can check out our Patreon page and support us directly. And also, if you found yourself getting a desk chair for F1 2018 or just your desk at home base, you can check out GT Omega and use the code Pitlane F1. That will also help us out directly. But that's been the podcast then for the Mexican Grand Prix. Socials all on the video right now. So if you want to check us out on Twitter, we tweet about the race and whatnot, but we'll check you guys next time. It's an off-race one, so we'll see if there's any news to come out in Formula 1, and we'll catch you guys then. But I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.